April, welcome. Good to see you.
Oh, it's fantastic to be here. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, of course. So, big intro. I know you've done a lot of stuff in your career from, being in the military to being in the corporate world and then out in back into being an entrepreneur, which is, I think, a similar journey that I took. I kind of went military, entrepreneur, corporate, back to being an entrepreneur. I guess I wanted to dive in, and you can start wherever you want to, obviously, but I guess the thing in your bio that caught my eye the most was earning seven figures and then deciding I'm not doing this anymore. I'm going to go do my own thing, which seems like a an odd moment to pivot. Can you tell me a little bit more about that moment or what built up to that moment?
Sure. So it wasn't so much a moment like, oh, now I've done this, I'm out of here. But it was a trajectory that built up over a couple of years. And I would have continued to earn that way because I was in such a fantastic place and time with a startup company and just on a growth trajectory that was amazing. But that company also had its own goals to go public and was doing all the things that it needed to do to go public, all good things, all that made sense, right? Bringing in different folks from private equity and changing its business model a little bit. And as I saw those changes from my own leadership perspective, those weren't the changes that I would have made in the company. And again, they weren't wrong, they made complete sense. But what it alerted me to was that on this trajectory, I needed to interact with folks in a certain way and make a certain group of people money doing what I was doing. Where what I was finding that I was having the most fulfillment doing was all of these different things that I did in the company that were completely outside of the scope of my role. And thinking the thought of, okay, you if you can make $100, you can make 1,000. If you can make $1 million here, you can make $1 million doing something else somewhere else. That's how I tend to think, because I think the success is transferable. What would it be like to be able to do all those things that you love so much in a company with people in every different industry? And the moment I had the thought, Ken, I couldn't unthink it. And I sat on it for 6 or 7 months, toying with it because I enjoyed what I was doing, the people I worked with, all of those things.
What was your role? Not to interrupt the story, but what was your role in that tech world? Like, what was your title? What was your position?
So I was regional vice president in the Americas, selling in the financial industry. So to regional size banks, which are asset sizes up to about 25 billion.
And so you were primarily responsible for what, like sales?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
100%. Yes.
Okay, got it.
Because of the size of the company and being a part of a startup, which is always so fun, got to build out the infrastructure for what our sales process would be so that we could take on more complex sales and
Mhm.
longer term relationships with folks and helping to train and mentor younger folks on the sales force. And what I was finding is, as much as I love to help people, and sales is always going to be one of my first loves, I enjoyed really building the processes and the infrastructure and helping other people be successful even more than I was enjoying my own.
Because you saw, I mean, and I'm guessing that you saw the impact that it had, I would assume, right? Like you fix a small thing in a sales process or in the way that people come in or the way that they're mentored. And it's like you could see the potential of it being duplicated, it sounds like, right? Or working on a bigger scale. Because you said once these ideas started coming into your head, it was very hard to shut them off. And I'm guessing it might have had to do with leverage or impact,
100% impact. And I think you
Yeah.
see that with a lot of entrepreneurs, especially serial entrepreneurs, where
Mm-hmm.
their first business is financial and or time freedom in a lot
Mm-hmm.
of cases.
Mm-hmm.
But as they go further into starting and having other successful businesses, ultimately that's where you go is impact. And I think you called it right on the head that without realizing that that's what I was really desiring, I really wanted to make a greater impact.
When you saw the again, not things they were doing wrong because they were just trying to sell the company, right? So they were doing probably textbook things, right? Like
Mhm.
clean up this
Well, and
side of the org
actually
chart. Go
go
ahead.
public. They were prepping to go public.
Oh, okay. And so doing the things you need to do, right? Clean up the balance sheet, right size head count, reduce expenses. None of that's super fun to go through, but it's all like necessary, right? Like you're saying, it's companies do that. Was it that in that process that you saw potential for just maximizing human potential to where you were like, maybe this model is not that what they were doing was wrong, but maybe the model is wrong? Because everybody does that, right? People still do that today. It's like, oh, we're getting ready to go IPO, or we're getting ready to even have private equity jump in, because it's a very similar pattern of like, okay, like, dad's coming home, we better clean up the house, right? Like
Right.
it's like, oh, we've been kind of sloppy over here, we better clean it up. Yeah, what did you see? What did you see that we're missing that you've been so successful with now?
So the thing to me that was a glaring misstep that really again had me thinking this thought over and over again. And again, in different people will view it through their own lens, whether they agree with it or disagree
Mm-hmm.
with it is, based on their thought process. But in having the success that I had had, a member of my team, but that was an inside salesperson, so
Mm-hmm.
didn't report directly to me, in my eyes, shared that success. And in the way that things had been written, shared in that success. And the decision was made not to honor that, that was going to be capped after the fact at a certain place. And for me, and interestingly, like I would have given that money from
Mm-hmm.
myself to another person and even suggested that, and they didn't want that precedent and they didn't want to do those things, which from a business perspective, I can understand where they were coming from. At the same time, I thought, when you have someone that performs at that level and you do something demotivating to them that early in their career, you've cut them off at the knees. And if you don't lose them, they'll never be the same person again. And I felt so strongly about that at the time that I think it just opened my eyes up to a way of looking at things. The way that I had consistently done business and conducted sales my entire life had been counterintuitive to the way most other people did it. But no one questioned what I was doing because I would tend to be the top person selling. And in that moment, I realized that me sharing that way of really pouring into people and putting their needs, if not above, at least on parallel with the company, was a better long-term strategy.
Mm-hmm.
And I really felt like it was important for me to get out there in the world and share it.
So going back to when you were just an individual, not just, but like when you were an individual contributor working your way into leadership, it sounds like this has been something that's been with you for a long time, where you were just focused on like, how can I serve? How can I provide value? Is that accurate?
100%. Like
Yeah.
I came into sales from a client services and implementation project management background because I had to learn the business I was in that I joined after the military. And there is nothing that will help you better understand the value of helping and how that leads to sales than when you're selling more than salespeople because you've helped clients and then they want to buy more.
Right. I mean, I hear what you're saying, and it hasn't always been that way for me. I think we're all geared to your point. It's why you've been successful doing what you're doing now. I think a lot of times we're geared to, just make the quota, make the number, do all of this. And the focus is an outcome, right? The focus isn't necessarily a behavior that could be right in front of us, which is just how can you provide value? How can you contribute? How can you, help? And I do find that the most successful time periods I've had in my life, and I'm probably in the most successful one now, is where my focus is genuinely on who can I help today. In fact, in my journal that I do every morning and every night, it's wins for the day and who did I help? Specifically, who did I help for the day, right? And it's like that always, I not to get all kind of wishy-washy with it, but I do believe in like laws of what is it, reciprocity, I guess. Where it's like karma, whatever you want to call it, where it's like there doesn't always need to be a I did this for you and now you owe me or anything. It's like just put it out there to the right people, usually, and it's going to come back. And it doesn't mean that everybody I have to help has to be of a certain whatever demographic or title. But I guess what I'm saying is if I think a lot of people are afraid to give because they're afraid of getting taken advantage of, right? And what I would say is surround yourself with a different group of people if that's a constant fear, or check your own limiting beliefs, right? Because that might just be wrong. But I think if you're around the right people, the right client base, the right employees, that what you're saying can't do anything but create more value, but not just for everybody else, but for yourself too, because again, it's always going to come back around.
Sure. And I think you can also be the catalyst for that. You can be that influence. I
Yeah.
have been in those groups of salespeople that were always be closing, and I was the odd person out that they thought was pretty odd in the beginning.
Right.
However, as you use that process more often and they get to see that you're genuinely just looking to help people, they may be baffled, but then they're also going to see what happens because of it. And to your point about helping folks, I think of it as like if you were to plant a garden,
Right.
right? And you plant a garden and you have all these different vegetables and you care for them, you fertilize them, you water them, you pour your effort, time, and energy into them. You, and to your point about reciprocity, you are not eyeballing one carrot saying you better grow,
Right.
you better grow because of this effort I'm putting in. You understand that as you put that out there, you don't have to micromanage where the crop comes from. It just will.
Ah, that's such a good way of putting it. I love that way you put that, because it is a crop and you are just kind of planting seeds and you're watering the whole thing, and you're
Mhm.
not looking for individual results. You just kind of know there's a certain amount of faith in it too. I was talking to some folks this morning that I coach in a mastermind, and I was like, sometimes there's a level of faith, and I don't necessarily, well, I don't want to say it's, I don't mean it in a religious way, or that I do.
Mhm.
I mean it in whatever way it appeals to people, right? Like whether it's spiritual, whether it's
I'll
karma,
just say
whether it's,
belief.
yeah, but there's a belief, and I believe that fear and faith are rooted in the same thing, which is it's a future prediction, right? It's sort of like, fear is me looking at the future going, it's not going to work the way I want it to. So I better hold things close. I mean, I surround myself in certainty. And faith to me is, no, it's going to work out. Like I'm doing the right things. And I think it does take a certain amount of faith
Mhm.
to do what you're doing. Or, for you, it's easy now because you've proven your own concepts to yourself time after time after time. I think a lot of people are still caught in this. Yeah, but if I give up my time and I don't get anything for it, like I don't have time to give, right? Which I think is, I didn't mean to go on this whole mindset tangent, but I think that's a um, trap in and of itself, because we're constantly telling ourselves there's a scarcity, right? There's a scarcity of time, there's a scarcity of resource, there's a scarcity of me. People probably won't reciprocate, right? So now I do have to track every little thing that I'm doing, and I do have to track that one carrot and make sure it sprouts, right? And I think there's a certain amount of faith in our business endeavors, or I think our personal endeavors, that are, hey, it's going to work out if I do the things. And again, if you choose not to use faith, you use believe. I believe that things are going to work out because I'm doing the right things around the right people on a consistent basis.
Well, and I think you took it to mindset, but that is where it starts. The
Yeah.
foundation of everything I do with entrepreneurs and business is at a mindset, because if somebody is really strongly entrenched into a scarcity mindset based on their life experiences, what they have found to be true, if we don't first address that and help them utilize tools to come out of that and come to a place just of neutrality, right? You don't have to
Yeah.
have an abundance mindset, but let me get you to neutral. Let me get
Yeah.
you to the idea that this could be different and this might be the time that it's different. Then they can start to prove to themselves, because their behaviors, just subconscious small little behaviors, will drive that scarcity to be true if
Right.
you can't find a way to be neutral with it first.
Yeah. We've talked about it a lot on here. I mean, I think our minds, to me, I mean, our mind is a little know-it-all that always wants to prove itself right, right? So it's like, told you they weren't going to come through, told you weren't going to get the deal, right? And so I do believe we keep putting those scarcity thoughts in our head, our mind starts manifesting ways to make it happen. And same with the other. I mean, if I truly believe that things are going to work out, Then I start seeing things that way. I start guiding myself towards those outcomes. So, what was the first thing you did when you left your job? Then, did you have time to kind of start ramping up? You said you had the thought for a while, for a few months,
Mhm.
until you kind of couldn't hold on to it any longer. Did you have the framework for a business already going, and then kind of ramped into it, or was it like, day one after you left your job, you had to kind of crank it up?
So I had absolutely no idea. And
Yeah,
I think it's super important to share that with people
yeah.
because it can be really scary leaving a successful role or even a role that you don't feel is successful when you don't have a plan and you're not certain how it'll work out. And the only thing I'd done is I had started a company in December of the previous year just because I really felt like this is where I was going to end up going. And if worst case scenario it didn't, I had just filed some, documents of incorporation, no big deal. When I then had my company, I originally, Ken, I thought I was going to teach people how to speak and how to sell. I had no idea what I was going to be doing. And I went through all sorts of limiting beliefs that I didn't know I had and didn't recognize at the time. I'd gone from being able to sell $90 million deals without batting an eye to being incredibly fearful that someone wouldn't hire me because I was young and I looked even younger. And would
Hmm.
they believe that I could turn around a P&L even though I'd done it before? So I spent a good 6 months spinning my wheels, looking for social proof, making super slick marketing materials and videos, and just making it look more corporate because I was just not confident at that point that people would see what I knew. So it's interesting because you talk about having that belief. I had that belief in myself. I doubted that other people would be able to see it.
So in
And
your mind, it was like kind of overcompensating with the marketing material or the presentation. It was like, if I can't convince them, maybe this will, right?
right, 100%. And then, interestingly enough, had a friend contact me who had another friend who had sold a company, a financial business, and had a great sale there, but also had another company that he'd started for a family member 10 years prior that was just bleeding revenue, like losing over $500,000 a year that he was just writing a check for.
Wow.
And he just wanted the bleeding to stop. And because that person happened to know that I turned around divisions within companies that were having issues, said, "Hey, can you do this? Could you turn around this company?" Ken, that's where what my company does came from because I said,
So
"Yeah,
that,
how
and
hard could it be?"
what's crazy too, though, is that that is rooted in who you are and what we even started talking about, which is, it sounds like it didn't even really occur to you to say no. It was like a friend came to you with a problem.
Mhm,
It sounds like you didn't go, well, let me see, it's going to cost you, blah, blah, blah. It was just like, sort of like, yeah, I mean, I'll jump in there and help. Let me see what I can do.
mhm.
That open eye combination of open eyed approach, but also, yeah, just being there to contribute led you to probably make the biggest discovery of your life, which was what your business was going to be like in the future.
100%. And it's interesting because there is not a single problem that can't be solved with someone asking themselves, "How can I help?"
Right. Right. That's so huge. And so what happened from there? So that company, you obviously helped them and then you went, "Oh my God, I think I have something here," or what?
100%. So
Yeah.
I got them to profitability in just under 6 months, then was able to, by digging into customer issues and complaints, develop a different line of business, a new pricing model to where they were able to do a multiple, almost 8-figure sale within 2 years.
Nice.
And that sale was not based on the revenue or the assets, although they were in a much better place. They weren't what would make someone buy. It was a strategic buy based on the customer that
Right.
we had dug into and really found a way to serve in a way that no one else in the industry was. This was in the trucking industry, by the way, which I knew nothing about. But it doesn't matter because there are people in a business that know everything about the industry. What you can come in to do to help really doesn't require that level of industry knowledge. You can research and bone up on that. What was so incredible was how quickly it happened.
Hmm.
And that's when I realized that this business owner was saying the same thing people had said to me all my life, which was, you did that so quickly and you explained it in a way that's easy for me to understand and pick it back up from you.
Right.
And I realized that was a thing. And what was so beautiful about it is I did not do a thing to market my business for the following 5 years. I didn't have to.
Constant referrals.
Mhm.
Yeah.
As people who had experienced what I did wanted me to come and work with their companies, which is incredible because you can go and help them and help all of these different people. And in addition to that, you're not spending the time that an entrepreneur would normally on, marketing and lead
Right.
generation, and all of these things. And I realized in doing it for myself and in helping companies that when you're pouring into the people in the company and especially the clients and then the community, that really starts generating referrals and leads for the company that will sometimes outpace their sales force.
Is this where the generosity culture was kind of birthed from? Because I see that sort of branded a lot in your stuff. Is it a byproduct or a child of this?
So somewhat it got
Yeah.
its name in this portion. It dates all the way back to my childhood when
Right.
a business person who didn't have to help a child she didn't know did that. And I watched her model helping people all the time and how successful she was. So for me, it was okay, successful people just look for ways to help. That's how you do this. Excellent. And then as I started to apply it and really differentiate it from a leadership perspective, that it starts with your people, that if you're pouring into them, really great things are going to happen. That's when it got a name. And it literally got a name from me talking to someone at a marketing firm when people were asking me to speak. So I needed to put together a speaking video. I explained what I did. And he's like, so it's like you go in and you create these cultures of generosity. And I was like, let me see if anyone has that.
Right, right. So when you were a kid, how old were you when you were exposed to that?
I was 9 years old.
Why did it strike a chord with you at 9 years old? I mean, I mean, that's a very young age to be going, that's how business works. That's how successful people. I mean, that's a pretty advanced thought for, I'm guessing you were like in third grade at the time. Like what, what was going on there?
So the first thing I'll tell you, Ken, is I was a weird kid. I
Yeah,
started my
yeah.
first business at 6 years old. So I
Okay.
was not very normal in that way. But I grew up in an environment of poverty, single
Hmm.
parent, substance abuse issues, surrounded by adults who were constantly poo-pooing ideas of success or doing things in a big way. And other than teachers, there was no one in my life up until that point who had a life I wanted.
Right,
So I didn't pay a lot of attention to what they said I couldn't do because I didn't like their life. So how do they actually know? And
right.
at least that's how I felt as a kid. And then when I met this woman who was helping my mom at the time go to rehab and who had had a phenomenal career in my hometown, really take this extra step of helping and then watch that she didn't just do it with me, she did it with a lot of other people. She was the first really successful person I'd ever met. I decided those two things went together. That if you're constantly looking to help and enrich people's lives, you're successful.
That is
And
awesome.
went with it.
Are you still in touch with her now? Does she know what you've done with your life and is she still around?
She does know what I
Yeah.
have done with my life, and
Yeah.
I talked to her quite a bit. We stayed very close. She passed away actually in February at the age
Sorry to
of,
hear that.
the world was lucky to have had her for as long
Yeah.
as it.
That's really cool. And it's interesting. Like it reminds me a little bit of my own story. It reminds me of some other people that I admire where, even if I look at like a Tony Robbins, where very tough upbringing, multiple fathers, kind of a mom that had some substance issues as well as some control issues, as well as I think five different husbands and some physical abuse and like a bunch of different stuff. And I don't want to tell his story, but I think for a lot of us, it's if you can take those things as gifts, because maybe that's the catalyst, right? That made you go, well, don't like the way these guys are doing it. So I better look for something else. And I did the same thing pretty young. And for me, the main thing, when you said, the kind of poverty piece, and I wouldn't say we were in poverty, but I felt like we were in poverty. I always felt like there was a lack. I think we were lower middle class, upper lower class, something like that. But it was we never had the money to do the things that like my friends did. We never had the money to, even if you went on a field trip, to be able to pay for it or whatever. I was the kid that had to go to the teacher and go, I can't actually buy lunch unless you like chip in, and it's embarrassing. And so yeah, from a very young age, like you, I remember I was selling. We had an orchard behind us with apples. That not even an orchard. We had a lot behind us that had apple trees on it. I'd grab the apples, I'd put them in a crate, I'd go sell them. Right? I'd have paper routes. I'd mow people's lawns. I'd do whatever I
Love
needed
it.
to do. Yeah, and out of necessity in a way, and like that kind of fueled me. Like it sounds like it fueled you when I got out of the military to go like no one's. I don't mean this in a woe is me way. I honestly mean it as a gift, but no one's, because it sounds like you'll relate. But I had this mindset and still do, I guess, to a certain degree of like, no one's going to save me, right? Like no one's coming to the rescue. No one's paying my bills. It's, unless I want to become a burden to the government or something, I better figure something out on my own because no one's going to figure it out for me. And while that sounds a little crazy for a 9-year-old like yourself to have to think about, there's a lot of good in that, right? It made you a super strong, independent person, like very young. And I was the same way. I never would have started a business in my 20s had I probably had the childhood I wanted when I was, 10 years old or whatever. Does that resonate?
Yeah, 100%. I
Yeah.
remember having the thought, okay, literally almost exactly what you said. No one is coming to save you.
Yeah.
That means you're the hero in the story.
Yeah.
So you've got to do it.
Yeah.
Instead of woe is me, it was, oh, okay, well, nobody saves the hero. So you're the hero. So figure this out and go for it. And one of the benefits that only in the past couple years has really come to me of growing up in that kind of environment is the fact that while you still have limiting beliefs, I believe we all have limiting beliefs in the sense that every time you up level, you still encounter that fear, that struggle, those
Of
things.
course.
But a benefit of not growing up with people who have done life so successfully is when they say you can't do something, it doesn't have the kind of weight it does if you have incredibly successful parents who provided everything to you.
Sure. Sure. I
That's
agree
a,
completely. I agree completely. And I had a lot of negativity too. I don't think it was meant, I don't think it was normally meant to be cruel or anything else. I think, what you talked about, having that woman in your life that gave you the example that she gave you, you linking that up, that created a worldview for you. That became part of how you see the world. My parents, your parents, whoever, they grew up with a set of parents and a set of circumstances that were completely different, right?
Mhm.
So their worldview is, why would you ever leave that job, April? You're nuts. What are you doing? I remember at one point, my parents just like jaws on the floor that I could actually earn $100,000 a year or something. And like, don't screw that up. Like, that's like, it can't possibly be based on any level of talent or skill or just where the world's at right now. It's like people like us don't make that kind of money, right? People like us don't go to college. People like us
Yes.
don't. These are all global
And that's it.
beliefs.
The people like us. That is
Yeah.
that is 100%.
That's
Yes.
the global belief. And they're not saying it to be cruel. They're saying it, I think, to protect you in a way, right? It's like don't put your
Because,
neck out there. It's going to get chopped off, right?
yeah, well, because they believe it. To them, that is
Yes.
true. So they are protecting you, and that's a gift that they're giving you.
Right.
And it sounds like you felt the same way I did when they would say that in my mind, because, Southern girl, you don't say these kinds of things out loud. I'm
Right.
not like you.
Right.
Like, people like us, I'm not like you.
Right.
I'm going to go do this, but I'll say yes, ma'am, and just keep going.
Yeah, that was the part of your story that really I keyed into is when you were saying you're 9 and you're looking for these things. Because I remember, and I talked about it once on the podcast, being really little, like as far back as I can remember, and going, this is not, I said it differently than this to myself because I was a kid, but this is not the example that I'm going to follow. Like in my head, I linked that up almost as like one of my earliest memories that I can even remember, period. Like 5 years old, just going, yeah, this isn't the way it's supposed to be. Like there's a better way to do this, and and there was, I think at least for me, right? And so I think, using that old phrase, I mean, I think everything can be a win or a lesson, right? And I'm grateful for a lot of those lessons. And I got to tell you, I don't think I got it as quickly as you did in life to be grateful for them. I think I was resentful for a long time. I don't think I saw the good that some of those life lessons brought. I think I was just resentful and like, that's not how I raised my kid, right? Like, that's not the way I'm going to do it. But looking back now, I wouldn't change it at all.
Well, I think people have the same experience with leaders, and
Yeah.
it can go one way or the other because I definitely learn more from bad leaders than good leaders because you then want to do the opposite of what they did and you have such empathy for what it would feel like for their team. And it can go either way because there are definitely people who have been burned, if you will, by bad leaders, and
Yeah.
that changes their view. They don't want to be in leadership, they don't like corporate. And for others, it can be this great catalyst of, I am going to go and spread this great leadership and help people be empowered and be successful.
How, so going back to impact then, right? Because that really, that's where it's at for you then, is like, if I can go in and show this company, this leader who's maybe having some struggles, those
Mhm.
struggles negatively impact a lot of people. We've been, as well as anybody listening to this, been the recipient of bad leadership, whether that comes in the form of family, whether that becomes in the form of your boss right now at work or whatever it is. And so is your main mission then to, mission might be the wrong word to put it, but I mean, I guess, do you strive to like, hey, if I can help this leader understand, they're going to help another 20 leaders understand. And those 20 leaders have hundreds, if not thousands of people under them. And that is real impact, I would think, for you.
100%. And that is how it started,
Yeah.
where it was very leader and company focused. And over the last year or so, again, from an impact perspective, have really been focusing on entrepreneurs as well, instead of going in and doing the work for the company, really empowering them with the tools and the ideas and the processes to be able to do it in their own businesses. And then even with the work on mindset, if I teach one person, if you learn anything amazing, you're going to tell people about it.
Right.
And that
Right.
is going to extend out that impact and really help. And for me, people are like, oh, what's the ultimate goal? Do you want to be, do you want to be king? What do you want to do? And I'd say, no, I want to be the kingmaker. I want to
That's cool.
help people do amazing things so that so often and so much that I don't even know where the impact is going to go. So
Right.
again, full circle back to Sue when I was 9 years old. I interviewed her and asked her as an adult, why me? Why'd you pick me? Why did you do that? Because it changed my life. And her answer, while eloquent and so loving, was basically, it was a Tuesday. I do those sorts of things, and you happen to be one of the people that I impacted, because for her, it wasn't an amazing, out of the ordinary thing. And to me, that's how we make true impact, when our regular way of showing up is changing lives left and right.
I truly just got goosebumps, which has not happened to me in a very long time. So, no, because when you said it was just like another Tuesday for her, and I was like, that's real leadership, because, and that's so authentic, because if, if I do it every week, but here are the two, and I'm going to pick them and I'm going to monitor them and I'm going to put them on a spreadsheet, there's a level of significance that I'm probably looking for, right? If I'm not trying to monetize it, I'm trying to, in some way, take credit. I heard someone say once that when someone's starting to talk about their wins and accomplishments, especially when it comes to people, when they start attaching numbers to it, there's probably a decent amount of significance into it, right? And she's like, In hers, there's nothing like that. There's no ego, right? It's just like, that's just what I do. And if you went back and told her all the people that you've impacted and all the people that they've impacted, she's probably feels good about it. But again, in the overall scope of her doing that for decades, how does she even measure that other than just to know in her heart that, hey, she probably did what she came here for, right? I mean, that's super
Mhm.
cool.
100%. And you're right, no ego.
Yeah.
And I'm sure there are far more people than she knows of. And anything that I accomplish in this lifetime, a big amount of that credit, if there is any credit, right, to your point, that's hers,
Yeah.
right? That she started that and it snowballed and it's just an incredible thing. And I think any leader has the ability to do that within a company, with individuals who now go to other companies, and that leadership, that legacy will go on.
Yeah.
And in that way, you always have time.
Yeah.
You can always find the way to pour into people because the impact won't just be on this year's P&L, although it will be there.
Yeah.
Your impact is going to be a legacy that you're never going to fully understand.
Well, what if we looked at every conversation and every interaction like that, right? So what if today's the day that this person what if this conversation is the one, good or bad, right, that influences this person for the next decade or influences the way that they lead other people down the road or whatever. And I think I know that I grade myself high as a leader. I do. Like, I'm not going to hide that. Like, I think I do a great job with engagement and but at the same time, I'm not at the level where I'm considering all of my conversations that much, if that makes sense, right? Or
Sure.
the impact that you could have on a daily basis with people, or what being short sometimes looks like or feels like to the recipient, when I didn't mean anything by it. I was just in a hurry. I just needed the information, right? And so, I mean, I think the way we communicate. So, when you come in with your programs, you said you're working primarily with the entrepreneurs, also with some bigger companies. What, I mean, without giving away the secret sauce or anything, is the first thing you do is kind of take an assessment of the culture, or where do you start? I guess normally.
Sure. Well, and Ken, let's give away the secret sauce.
Cool. Let's do it.
Come on,
You're a
because
giver. Yeah.
everyone can do this,
Yeah.
right? The people who bring me in want help with it or want it done faster. But if you
Right.
don't know how to do it, I will give it to you.
Right.
And I do want to just revisit really quickly what you said about, what if I'm short or what if I that?
Yes.
That is a gift because I will be short with someone. I
Right.
will, say the wrong thing and then I get to go back to them and I get to say, hey, you know what? I don't like how I handled that.
Yeah.
I would have rather have done this, and I just want to apologize and tell you I'll do better. And then you leave. And as a leader, I encourage people to do that as much as possible and to do it as publicly as possible. Why?
Yes.
Every time we share that we fail, we make it easier for other people to become
Totally.
the best versions of themselves and to admit when they fail.
Yeah.
And then it's not a thing, it's destigmatized. So the first thing that I do when I'm working with the company or even with an entrepreneur, when we're talking about pouring into people, is go and talk to people
Hmm.
and talk to them about who they are. What do they want? What are they looking for in life? Not particularly in this job, in this role. And the value of that conversation is starting to understand the whole person, what their goals are, and how this business aligns with what they ultimately want for their life
Hmm.
instead of in the reverse. The reason being, I often go in and move people around because you've got hidden gems in your company and you don't know how great they are and how talented they are because you haven't had the time to have that conversation with them. And I can move them to somewhere where they impact the company's revenue and profitability in a huge way, but also they're happier, more
Yeah. They're
likely to
lit up.
stay.
Hmm.
And doing that, just taking that time, those conversations, I will learn almost everything I need to know about a company just by talking to the people. Then I'm going to have conversations with the unhappiest clients, and that's going to tell me everything else I need to know. Not just about what isn't working well, but what could make them a ton of money. Because every time we step into those uncomfortable conversations with clients who are not happy with us, we're going to walk away with ways to improve what we're doing or new ideas of needs that aren't being met
Hmm.
that are going to increase our value, not just to that client, but to the marketplace as a whole.
Awesome. I love that. I want to tell you a quick story because I don't know if it was intuition or dumb luck, but maybe a combination of both. But when I sold a company that I started in my 20s to a big company, a Fortune 500 company, and I went to work for them. And I was very hands-on boss, leader, talked to people every day, knew where they were coming from, knew what they were there for. A lot of the things that you're talking about right now, I think I was instinctually pretty good at when I had a small team, small team being like half a dozen people. Then all of a sudden we went from 6 to 15 and I was having trouble, like kind of, I don't think I know that guy as well as that one or whatever. And then 15 went to 30 really quick because we did a acquisition. And then it was just a mess. I hadn't built any systems to do this on a company wide basis. And so one day, and this sounds like an exercise I read out of a book now that I look back on it because it's so simple but it was effective, but it was literally just I was just making it up and I really just wanted the information. I remember bringing everyone into the conference room, owning the situation. So like guys, I don't like the way I'm showing up right now. Like I'm very used to
Love it.
understanding you, understanding why you're here. Everybody that's been with me prior to these acquisitions, they know that. Uh, and I'm just not living up to that right now. And so we've got to find some ways to bridge the gap. And until we bring in and change the org chart and bring more leadership in, which we're going to do, I just like each of you to take the weekend because this was a Friday. And I said, I'd just like you to take the weekend and write down for me what's important to you. What are some of your goals? And it doesn't have to pertain to work. It can. But frankly, I'd rather it be, even if it's tangible things, like I want to buy a boat or something, that's okay,
Mhm.
right? I can work with that. But like, why do you want to buy the boat? I want to be close to my kids. I want to spend weekends, with my kids on the lake or whatever, right? But do what you need to do and then bring those back to me. And I'd prefer if they were just handwritten because I don't want you guys to overthink this and I want you to overdo it and I want it to come from your heart. So just have a coffee Saturday morning, write this up for me, bring it to me on Monday. And I'm not going to share them with anybody, but over the course of the next week or whatever, I'll bring each of you in one at a time. We'll spend a few minutes and talk about it. And so we ended up doing that. And it was amazing, right? Because you had people that were, like you said, like the hidden gems, the sleepers, the person who
Mhm.
no one even knew wanted anything that actually wants to be CEO of the company or whatever, right? And you had other people that were in sales and super motivated by money and telling you exactly what the incentive was that they wanted that would drive them there. And we never knew it. So we never
Right?
had the leverage. And so, but what was crazy about it was, and this was the unintended gift, I guess, that we got from it. So we did get the thing I was looking for was like, let's close the gap. Let's figure out what people want and let's start them on, you know, whatever that is now. Let's move this person over to sales, like you're saying, or let's get this person more dialed into their goals or whatever. Or maybe this person values work-life balance. Let's help them achieve that as well. But I kept all of those in my top drawer of my desk, right? And anytime someone's behavior, and I wasn't doing it as a disciplinary tool, I genuinely I wasn't, but if someone's behavior was different than how they were showing up, I would look at it and just kind of go like, is this where you want to be? So if someone was a frontline contributor at the time, new employee, whatever, and wanted to be in leadership, then it was great. Do you want me to lead you and manage you towards leadership and towards being the best leader you can be? Or should I manage you for the job that you're in today? Like, because they're different standards, right? If I tell you I want to run a 5 minute mile versus an 8 minute mile, that's a whole different training regimen, right? That you're going to put me on.
100%.
So, anyway, not to hijack the story, but that was like 30 years ago. And it was like probably my most effective accidental day of leadership that I had my whole career. And it just aligns with what you're talking about right now. So I really like it.
Well, 100%. And I
Yeah,
think what you just gave an excellent example of is that a company doesn't necessarily need April Sprints to pour into their people.
sure.
And it's a super simple thing. The same way a good diet and exercise are super simple, most of us know how to do it. It
Right.
is in the consistent application that the magic is, and
Right.
that we are committed to doing it even when it's not convenient, even when it would be easier to cut corners, because we care so much about what that end result is going to be and that ongoing result. And you gave an excellent example.
How do you keep companies? I met with a guy yesterday, really great guy named Anthony Trucks, and in his coaching, what he talks about is there's the goal and there's setting up kind of what you're gonna do, and then there's the discipline. And I think what you just said reminded me of the discipline, which I don't know if I was always the best at. Of how do you then get companies after you leave to go, because I'm sure you come in a bit like a whirlwind, even though I'm guessing it's kind of quiet. You're meeting with people, they're going about their daily business pretty soon. Jack is over on the sales team and Marcy is over in product development, and you had a focus group with these customers, and then quickly, boom, 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 things start going off like fireworks, and they're like, oh my God, what did you do? And it was like I started talking to your people, listening to your people, aligning them with their own goals and with your goals and things like that. But after that, you leave. And now, even though the culture is providing positive reinforcement now, how do you, not that you can ensure that the business owners do it after you leave, but there's the discipline part now that comes in, right? About like, how do you now take these new tricks or new standards or new rituals and make them rituals, right? Does that make sense?
Absolutely. And the biggest part of that is in that engagement in working with the company and working with the individuals, is helping them to move from an extrinsic scorecard for themselves to an intrinsic one.
Yeah.
And them really starting to enjoy the process. I mean, we all get a big dopamine hit about hitting a goal.
Right.
But then as we are going towards that goal, our mind is constantly in the background measuring feedback, and are we going to get there? Are we not? Do we want to make this feel good? Do we want to keep going? Do we not? And what are the ways that I can incentivize those teams and help the leaders understand how to do that, to keep them on track, to reward that consistency in the ways that are meaningful to them, to the point that you made with your story? Because as they start to get those positive results, that is what starts to form that pattern and that behavior. Because a lot of people, when you talk about habits and talk about the way the mind works and the neuroscience, it's 17 days or 11 days or 14 days, and everyone associated the period of time with the habit. And there is correlation, but there's not actually causation. The causation in forming good habits and behaviors that we consistently repeat is the feeling that we get when we're doing them.
Mm.
So, really helping people find what they enjoy about what they're doing in their job, whether that's part of the job itself or the fact that doing that job and doing it well allows them to spend more time with their family, which is what they really value, and them associating doing it well with getting something else that they want. That's how you plant the seeds for that behavior to stay consistent over time. Is it 100%? No, but if you go at it at the right way, they can scale back to 80% of what they were when you were there guiding them, and
Hmm.
it is still leaps and bounds above what they were having before.
Well, I think even what you said there, I don't want it to be missed, of the the joy is in the moment that you're like with them, actually connecting and understanding what their own mission is and what they really want to do and what they're all about, and
Mhm.
to not lose track of that. Because if that's the thing, if that's the North Star, instead of, oh, I have to do this because sales are down, oh, I better go re-engage with my team because sales are down, like that's not the
Right.
right probably reason to do it. Instead of going, oh, I want to re-engage with my team because I haven't had a one-on-one in quite some time with April. Do you know what I mean? And like, it's time to do that again. And so, because I love connecting with April, right? It was so much fun when we did it before. Her results went way up as a result. Her and her husband bought that boat. They are spending weekends at the lake. Like, it's really cool, right? So that's amazing. So do you keep companies then and entrepreneurs? I guess it's case by case, but do they stay on with you and continue training with you or checking in with you over a period of time, or is it normally like you come in, do your thing, install systems, and they go self-sufficient, or I guess it's probably a mix. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a little bit of a mix of both. And ultimately, what I want is to empower them to a point that they outgrow me. That's what I would
Right.
love.
Right.
And when I work with a company, I'll sometimes stay on in an advisory role or on the board, something like that, for a period of time. More than anything, almost like those training wheels on a kid's bike that have flipped up. They don't actually need them anymore, and you
But they
can tell
like
them
them.
they need them,
Mm-hmm.
but they feel so much better if they're
Mm-hmm.
there.
Sure.
And the same thing with entrepreneurs. I'm only needed for a certain period of time when they go through one of my business acceleration cohorts, but they can then move into, do you want to do 2 calls a month in the group that are laser coaching where you can fire questions at me so you still have access? And that being the ultimate goal, that at some point they're at a place where they're focusing on something else and they've been accelerated to the point that they can. And most folks would say, oh gosh, you don't want to work yourself out of a job. But for me, heck yeah, I do. There's always going to be somebody else that needs help.
Yeah.
I'm here to make everyone, facilitate them getting better.
And so is the method, because I think I just heard you touch on it, but is the method, do you offer both group and individual, or how does it
I do.
work?
So for companies, that's different. That's me. I'm on site. I'm working with the teams. That's almost a done for you, if you
Yeah.
will.
Yeah.
With entrepreneurs, it can either be one-on-one, which I do less and less now, because what I find is there's a bigger benefit to people to being in a group with other entrepreneurs, because what they feel they might not get in the one-on-one attention, they get from the other entrepreneurs, and being exposed to what is one of my huge value props, which is I've worked in so many different industries. I can give ideas that seem genius but are table stakes for
Sure.
someone else who's in a
Sure.
different vertical, right? So having those folks together in a group, and then they move from that, from taking them through a very accelerated process over a couple months to, like what you were saying before, just those check-ins, and still having the ability to, in that case, what I find is affirm that they're making the right choice and maybe offer a couple of caveats that might make it a little better.
That's so awesome. Well, I love the work that you're doing. I love that it comes from, this is like a lifelong, I'm guessing for you, life probably, not to put this on you, but you probably feel pretty fulfilled right now because it goes back to who you were when you were 9 years old, right? And this woman helped you out. And now there's not that many people whose lives have come full circle where you're doing exactly what you were meant to do. It's coming from a place of contribution, which anybody, if I've learned anything from hosting a lot of entrepreneurs, it's like if contribution doesn't make its way somehow into your fulfillment journey, there's probably not a fulfillment journey. There might be a bit of a success one, but not necessarily fulfillment. So, um, congrats to you on everything that you're doing. It sounds very well deserved.
Thank you. I am super grateful and I enjoy it. And I want that for everyone. I want folks to feel like I do, that if tomorrow I was magically a billionaire, the only thing that would change about my life is probably the level of my transportation.
Yeah, there you go. There you go. Um, Private jet, that kind of thing. Maybe
Absolutely.
I could go without
Only to get to
TSA.
clients faster, really.
Yeah, just so you can serve more. Awesome. April, thanks so much. Pleasure to meet you. Love what you're doing. We're going to put all of your ways of getting in touch with you in our show notes. And thanks again for all that you're doing and all that you're putting out there.
Oh, thank you. It's been a pleasure.
You got it. Take care.